free.
Yes, he will. Jesus will. Come on, let me hear you say it. Say, when I'm in trouble. When I'm in trouble. He gives me a song. In the night season. In the night season. And all the day long. Then who makes me do right? Who makes me do right? When I would do wrong. Yeah. Yes, he will. Come on, everybody, say it with us. When I'm in trouble. When I'm in trouble. He gives.
Good morning. It's Politics and Grits with Kevin Peterson. It's Thursday. Every Thursday, 8 a.m. We're here at Boston Praise Radio 102.9. We're live, drive time on 31 different media platforms. It's good to be here another Thursday after the new year, as we go into the MLK holiday weekend. It's going to be marvelous to once again sort of reflect deeply on Dr. King and his work and his legacy, and just think about not only his connection with Boston, but his influence across the country and across the globe. Some of us are going to be gathering on this coming Sunday at 4 p.m. at Faneuil Hall to reflect on Dr. King's legacy, his spiritual legacy in particular. I'm always a little disturbed or disconcerted when this holiday is used to propagate Dr. King as a secular leader. He really is fundamentally a spiritual leader. And so the New Democracy Coalition is pulling together individuals of different faith denominations and traditions. It's called the Abrahamic tradition, Muslim, Christians, and Jews from different denominations to Faneuil Hall on this coming Sunday. We want to invite our listeners at 4 o'clock. It's going to be a short program, 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock. We're gathering to talk about the spiritual dimensions, in particular of Dr. King. And we're doing it in front of Faneuil Hall, which has a particular interest to those who want to change the name because of the negative spiritual association of Peter Faneuil's name to that hall. Peter Faneuil was a slaver, a person who dehumanized other individuals, other beings. And we think it's fitting to bring the message of Dr. King, his connection with the message of Christ, in terms of respecting the dignity of all and the worth of all individuals. It's fitting to come to Faneuil Hall at 4 o'clock on this Sunday to talk about King as representative of the Abrahamic tradition. So we want you to join us as we continue this work of reparations. There's no disconnection really between the work we're doing around changing the name of Faneuil Hall and the work of repair in the city of Boston. It's reparations. How do we find a way to address the issues of our past in the city and move towards repair? And only then do we move towards reconciliation. So I'm glad that there's movement on the Boston City Council that around reparations hearings. We want to be mindful, and we continue to push the members of the council, a new council in some ways, that we also have to get to the issue of apology. The city must apologize for its complicity in the slave trade. We note that in the history books, it's been noted, I should say, that that 3 men, black men, African men, arrived in East Boston as the initial slaves in the Massachusetts Bay Colony. They were the first in 1638. And since then, there's been a legacy of racism, structural and otherwise, from 1638 to 2022. And there must be redress, structural and otherwise. We appreciate that, but there also must be spiritual redress, and that comes in terms of apology. Michelle Wu would do well in terms of how she advances her administration, and she would initiate a process where the city of Boston apologized for slavery. Other cities have done it. Michelle Wu can be a leader in terms of getting this moving forward, as well as other members of the Boston City Council. So we look forward to our continuing work around repair in the city of Boston with regard to race. We are also mindful of the work that we continue to do around voting rights. So this weekend, as I alluded to just a few minutes ago, we're gathering at Faneuil Hall. We also have a strong message to President Biden and the Senate, the U.S. Senate, around passing the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. We need that. And passing the Vote for American Act this weekend. President Biden had strong words this week around his desire to push that bill. There was a Boston Five. I was included in this group. We went to Washington, D.C. this fall, right before Thanksgiving. And we got arrested at the White House. There were over 200 people arrested in the White House across the country. Well, the call that I was on last night, the national call, says that all of us who were arrested and all of us who were engaged in that White House action need to do something and say something this week in memory of Dr. King. 1965 Voting Rights Act, from Selma to Montgomery, Edmund Pettus Bridge. We will stand in the legacy of that on this coming January 7th, 17th, this Sunday at Faneuil Hall. We're going to talk about the issue of voting rights there and make the call along with other activists across the country. Well, we got an interesting conversation that continues this morning. We got a special guest. Some of our listeners will remember that about 2 weeks ago we had Minister Randy Muhammad from Muhammad's Mosque number 11 in Grove Hall, who came and spoke fairly clearly and concisely and precisely about his opposition to a cannabis warehouse that's being planned in Grove Hall. This is part two. We have the other person, individual or entity that's proposing this warehouse as a business opportunity and as a community benefits venture. Brian Keefe, good morning.
Good morning.
How you doing?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
Good. I'm glad you're here because we want to hear, the listeners want to hear, and I want to explore both sides of this issue around cannabis sale and your venture. I've already come out on the record to say that I oppose it. Not because I oppose business, but because I oppose the sale of marijuana or cannabis on religious and personal reasons. I applaud you and young people of your generation in terms of bringing your entrepreneurial interest and skills into the community and possessing an eye towards building the community by using business as an opportunity. I want to talk about that during the course of the hour, but I want to start with just a basic sort of question that I've been asked to ask you. For some people who've asked what am I going to talk about on the show with you? They said, Brother Kevin asked Brian if he does drugs. Do you do drugs?
I almost took a Tylenol yesterday.
Okay.
But I decided against it.
Okay.
I didn't know what it was going to do to my body, so I didn't do it. But to seriously answer your question, do I partake in cannabis? Every now and then I do.
Mm-hmm.
I'll do an edible, but for the most part, no.
Mm-hmm.
It's not something that I do on a daily basis, weekly basis. For me, it's more of a, when I want to. I make the adult decision,
Yeah.
to consume or to not consume,
Mm-hmm.
just like many people have been doing prior to the legalization of cannabis in this state.
So it's a matter of choice to you. Do you think cannabis, it was the second question, that cannabis is a dangerous drug, or some people say it's a potential gateway drug?
I
People have made that argument.
Yeah. Yeah, I think any drug can be a dangerous drug. Anything that's abused can be dangerous. There are drugs that are prescribed on a daily basis by medical professionals that, if abused, they can lead to bad outcomes. So I think that, what we're doing, what we're proposing, is a recreational cannabis facility, and our goal and our hope is to, sell cannabis to responsible adults, 21 years or older. And we think that if individuals are responsible and use the cannabis appropriately, they'll be happy with their outcomes.
Yeah. Okay, I got a ton of questions.
Please.
And we're going to have a good hour of conversation. Here's one sort of semantic or issue around nomenclature, right? When we were growing up, or up until recently, we called cannabis weed, or we smoked a joint.
Yeah.
It's now cannabis, and it appears to me that it has that kind of name change because it's being sanitized or made more approachable as a product in the city.
Yeah, and that's okay. I think that I think as proponents, we're looking to put this out to a wide range of people. 21 years or older. And I think that, there is a negative connotation to some words. I've heard reefer and reefer madness as I've kind of, gone through this process. And, it's not that. That's not what we're doing, and that's not what we're proposing. We're proposing a perfectly legal facility for responsible adults.
Why don't you say it's a weed business?
Sometimes they do. Sometimes they do. Depends on the context in which I'm speaking.
Okay. Well, let's go into the aspect of the business. En route is the name of the business. Let's talk about how you conceptualize it. Who are your partners? What's the intention of the enterprise?
Sure. So En route was
En route, not en route. Okay, en route. It has a French kind of. That's how you pronounce it?
That was the goal, but it was born out of our sister company, Rooted in Roxbury.
Okay.
So Rooted in Roxbury is a socially conscious cannabis business. Our goal is to bring recreational dispensaries to the city of Boston and surrounding communities. We didn't want to just do it with us and our partners. We wanted to create a model where people from the community, people who were coming from the most impacted communities during the war on drugs, had an opportunity to have a seat at the table in this billion-dollar industry. So we created a model where, with as little as $1,200, with as much as $100,000, people of color from our community could now invest in a business that we hope is going to be in the industry. So on Newberry Street, we were able to get our approvals from the city of Boston, and we hope to open our Newberry Street location at 331 Newberry Street in about 6 months from now. En route, as you can see, the kind of connection between Rooted in Roxbury and En route. En route is our delivery business, where we hope to site our first location in Grove Hall. And what a delivery business is basically no customers would be at that site. It's simply a location where cannabis is stored. And think of it as similar to Amazon, where a customer would place an order online, and then we would then deliver the products that they've ordered directly to their door. Our partners, there's 5 of us at En route. It's myself and my wife, Joanne. Our partners, Rokia and Salman Chowdhury, who own the Dudley Cafe and the Shanti Indian restaurants. And then our newest member of the team, our partner, James Finney.
You just said something, just in terms of your description. You see this, and some see this as an antidote to the war on drugs.
Yeah.
So to explain that, because it sounds counterintuitive that you would use the sale of drugs. You would agree that that marijuana or weed is a drug.
Absolutely.
As an answer to the war on drugs. Explain that to our listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. So the listeners,
Mhm.
the voters in Massachusetts are the ones who brought the referendum to the floor to legalize marijuana. The legislators are the ones who created the language that created the industry that we know today. What happens, especially in the infancy of emerging markets, is that people who've already been in other businesses, and let's just be frank, people who are not black, white people, will typically have the dollars to get into those businesses and then create the markets. And then we, people of color, are typically left only as consumers.
Yeah.
Or we are, invited into those groups to be part of those companies when quotas need to be filled, when there needs to be a person of color on the board or at the table. We wanted to flip the script and create a company that was, owned and operated, run by people of color, and then also invested by people of color. At our Newberry Street location, we have 54 investors. 52 people are people of color from the city of Boston.
Okay, so but how is this a war on drugs when you're propagating drugs? I mean, you're using drugs as a way to. So explain that. I mean, unless that was a faux pas, it's not clear to me that it's a war on drugs when you sort of embrace the drug industry and sell drugs.
The war on drugs is not something that was propagated by persons like myself or proponents of.
No, in terms of you using marijuana now as a response to it, you're saying it's a war on drugs, or are you saying that okay? Explain that.
The war on drugs was failed.
Okay,
that didn't work.
That's from the Nixon administration, all that sort
correct.
of stuff, right?
The war on drugs, what that did was put people who look like me and you, put us in jail.
So this is a response to
correct.
The war on drugs, but you're using drugs as you're weaponizing drugs in the other way against the whole project of.
I think weaponizing is probably the wrong term to use, because what we're doing is we're taking something that's now legal, and we're making sure, especially with the
war is legal. I don't think, and that's you use weapons in war. I don't think I'm misusing it. I'm just saying you're using the sale of drugs as a way to respond on a failed war on drugs, is what you're saying.
The war on drugs, we believe, is now over. Now that cannabis is legal, we're taking this as an opportunity to create wealth and generational wealth in communities of color. So instead of now that the war on drugs is over and this is now a legal product, what we don't want is for those who perpetrated the ills to now profit off of it. Now that it's legal, we want to ensure that people of color are allowed to profit off of this. And the model that we've created ensures that, because we purposely looked for investors from our community who were people of color, so that when we were paying profits and when there was a financial benefit, that it was going back to our community.
One of the things that Minister Randy Muhammad said a couple of weeks ago, he was on the show. He said, "Well, let's make an analogy here. If we legalize prostitution, would that be a good thing in and of itself being legalized?" And he was making the analogy to legalizing marijuana as a potential benefit. He was saying that was morally wrong, and that we shouldn't, and that his equivalency of prostitution potentially being legalized sort of proves his point. Do you think, instead of you responding to that, do you think if the Commonwealth, the voters of the Commonwealth, legalized prostitution, that people would have the right, and would you even participate in something like that?
Well, I think before you even get to that point, you have to ask yourself, would the voters of the Commonwealth legalize prostitution? And I think that you actually phrased it the right way, because that's how the legalization of cannabis came to be, is that the referendum came from the people. So what you have to ask yourself is, do you think morally the people of Massachusetts would bring the legalization of prostitution, or the legalization of crack cocaine, or the legalization of slavery? Would they bring those things to the table? And if they did, let's say that there was 100,000 people who were able to put that to vote. If that did happen, would the people of Massachusetts vote those types of things forward? I don't think we know the answer, but I think I can say no.
Well, Massachusetts did legalize slavery.
Well,
And,
yes.
and the people of Nevada have legalized prostitution.
That's very true, and that's the thing. But those are the choices that we, the people, have to make. And if we, the people, put that forward,
So you're saying
then we,
there's
the
no
people, are gonna
moral
vote for it.
equivalency between the potentially legalizing prostitution and legalization of marijuana. There's no moral equivalency.
I'm one individual,
Mhm.
and what I'm saying is that those things, if it came to a vote, that I would vote no. And I believe, having been here in this state for 38 years, I believe that the people of Massachusetts, if something like that were to somehow get on the ballot, that the vast majority of people in this state would also vote no. So I think that until something like that were to come to pass, even putting it on the table is
Notwithstanding it getting on the
irrelevant.
ballot and being, no, it's not irrelevant. I'm asking you as a person who lives in the community,
Mhm.
if it were legalized, prostitution,
Yeah.
would you be supportive of it as a morally, on a moral basis? Would you be supportive?
No, I've already answered that question.
Okay.
If it's crack cocaine or prostitution, or I don't remember what the other thing we said was,
Uh-huh.
but
Slavery?
No,
Uh-huh.
slavery. That's right. No,
So-
those
so-
items. No, I would not be
Okay.
in approval of those.
Okay. So we're going to come back to this.
But I will say
find
this.
some, I find some
I will say that.
inconsist-
Well, no, I will say this. Let's bring it back to the purpose of the conversation. You know, cannabis was approved because I think the science has told everyone who's paying attention that cannabis, marijuana, is not crack cocaine. So
Of
there,
course
so
not.
there is no,
course not, yeah.
there is no equivalency to one
Well, they're
thing or
not
the
the
other.
same, but they both induce intoxication. You
Yeah.
get high through crack cocaine and marijuana.
And some
So
people
so
can't,
they're not the same substantively, right?
and some
I
people
agree.
can't start their day without 2 cups of coffee. Do you know what I mean? And when will we bar the scourge of coffee and sugar in the black community? When are we going to stop that?
Yeah.
You know what
well,
I mean?
Well, it's an issue, but I don't know if it's appropriate to make the equivalence there of
we're doing it.
of Reese's candy bars and crack. That's kind of extreme.
Well, then we
You-
have
you
to
know-
ask the question: what has killed more black people, hypertension and high blood pressure, or cannabis? I'll leave it up to you to answer
Well,
that question.
I'm not a medical
Oh, wow.
scientist, but I would say
Your listeners
I
know
would
the
say,
answer.
yeah, but but I would say that most listeners and most people would say that there is a difference between a sugar high and a cocaine high or a marijuana high.
But
And
and that's the
and-
thing. And most listeners have their own moral determinations as to how they make
Well,
their
no,
decisions.
there's something that's generally
and we
good,
shouldn't
no?
impart our morals on other people.
Yeah, no, well,
We have to-
we do
we have
that-
to make
no,
our own decisions
no, we
as
do,
adults.
No, we impart our morals on other people all the time.
My kids,
well,
absolutely.
Yeah, you do. You do it,
Absolutely.
and we say as a society we shouldn't steal, you
Absolutely.
shouldn't murder,
It-
you shouldn't carjack anyone. So we as a community we agree with certain standards.
Certainly.
So if we want to pull this to the issue of around drugs, or trying to pull it into equivalency of drugs as being equal to the consumption of sugar, then we run into a conversation that
It's a
seems
slippery
a
slope.
little
It's a slippery slope and it's a
extreme.
rabbit- it's a rabbit hole.
It's an extreme stroke. We're with Brian Keefe. This is Kevin Peterson with Politics and Grits. We're starting a robust conversation, friendly,
Healthy.
healthy, but it's very important. One of the things I said to Brian before we started was that this is a great topic in terms of having a robust community forum. In some ways, this issue for some is about community control. Should we have this cannabis warehouse in Grove Hall? Is it healthy for the community? What are the impacts, good or bad, however it's explained? Let's go to a call. Brian Keefe, good morning, caller. How are you? What's your question or your comment, please?
Good morning. Can you hear me? This is Jamal Crawford.
Mr. Crawford, good morning.
Good morning. So first of all, Mr. Keith, if you could, it's been very difficult to hear you. Can you pull that mic closer to you, up
My
onto your,
apologies. How's
closer to you so we can really hear you? 'Cause
How's
it's
this?
been very difficult. But yeah, this has been a good conversation. Now, first of all, I am pro cannabis, marijuana, whatever you want to call it, have been since my youth. what I want to say about this is, particularly to this Grove Hall location, because I'm glad you clarified a couple things. One, a warehouse and a distribution center. This is not going to be a place where somebody can come in the front door and say, "Hey, this is not a retail operation." So that's good point of clarification. However, me being a proponent of marijuana, cannabis, and I don't have a lot of these other isms and schisms that a lot of other people do. I do, however, say that knowing Minister Dawn, knowing that family and whatnot, and with the opposition, couldn't you just find another site and maintain the original spirit? Because, for instance, the mosque is right there in Grove Hall. What if somebody got the building, right next to the mosque and wanted to create a pork butchery, something that is again against the thing? And this is where their businesses used to be. I just think that maybe that there's a good solution here because there's no shortage of retail space, and I think that maybe just in the spirit of good community, I have no problem against the business. But with the opposition to the business at this location, in deference to the legacy of Don Muhammad, I would ask that you would find it in your heart to just find another alternative, and then you could have all the support. And then the other thing I want to say to Kevin is just some of these are really bad, examples of comparing marijuana to this or that or whatever. Because as we know, if we go through crack cocaine, nobody is busting through their mama's house to steal their TV to go buy a 20 bag of reefer, right? Not to my knowledge, right? And so this level of addiction, the level of damage that it does to the brain, there are no medicinal benefits from crack, in its raw form or what have you. So I think to equate marijuana on this other scale with drugs, I think is really unfair. And in my view, it should have never been put on that thing to begin with. And in fact, when we talk about more dangerous substances in our community, as we know, we're surrounded by a number of variety stores. Scientifically proven, we don't have to worry about do we know this or do we know that. We know for a fact that tobacco and alcohol is certainly more dangerous and causes more deaths, whether via cancer, via the tobacco, or drunk driving via the alcohol, than cannabis ever could hope to. So I hope that we get off of some of the demonization. Yeah. And the last part that I'll say to this, Kevin, and on this radio station, in terms of the legalization of prostitution, would people participate if prostitution was legalized? Well, a lot of people have participated, and it still ain't legal. And a lot of those people who participated in it come out to church too, huh? So we got to think about this. Let's not get a holier-than-thou thing, because a lot of people, even in the church, smoke some reefer, drink some liquor, smoke some cigarettes or cigars, and occasionally might dabble in the occasional woman of the night.
Thank you, Jamal, for your call. We appreciate it. I think we got some other calls. Oh, let's get to some other calls. I haven't.
Have a good morning.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it. Caller, good morning. We're here with Brian Keefe talking about the marijuana dispensary or warehouse. Dispensary or warehouse? Warehouse. In Grove Hall. Should it come? Should it not come? Caller, you have a question or a comment?
I have a question.
Yes.
It's a political question that goes to both of y'all.
Yes.
My question is, what was Leah Edwards, District 1, who's the current district council, but going to be the state representative later on this month, to push for her agenda or plan in legalizing marijuana?
I'm not sure. I know the current city councilor was just elected, Tanya Anderson.
Yes.
I believe she supports the warehouse. I'm not sure to whom you're referring. Could you name someone? I mean, if the person is elected or running for office, I think it's a matter of public record.
Yes, it was Leah Edwards.
Leah Edwards. Okay, so what's her? You're asking what's her position?
Yeah, because again, I ain't buying the argument or fact that she helped legalize marijuana or something, unless she has something to benefit from, unless she has some kind of stake, like an investor, like your guest being saying for multiple times in the marijuana business.
Yeah. I'm not sure of her position, quite frankly. I didn't pay attention to that campaign some years ago in terms of who were the persons involved. I don't know, Brian, if you know, but thank you for your call, Dico. Thank you.
I will not speak for her. I know that she has not weighed in on Lydia Edwards. Council Edwards has not weighed in on our business or our businesses. I know that she has been supportive of ensuring that people of color are represented in the cannabis industry as it comes to the city of Boston.
We have another caller. Okay, so we'll wait for that. Wait for the caller to call back. I do want to go back to the issue of community benefits. We really haven't sort of talked about that. You were participating in a hearing, a City of Boston hearing on yesterday, and I listened in for a bit. And you spoke, and your team spoke extensively about community benefits.
Yeah.
Those things that this business, if it was allowed, would bring into the community, Grove Hall and beyond, particularly the Black community. Can you talk about what is a community benefit with regard to an entity coming into a community? And what is the profile of your community benefits package, so to speak?
Yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of times when we think development and we talk about community benefits, it's usually kind of like a one-time thing. We're going to build this building, and if we build it, we're going to donate X number of dollars to this specific fund or this cause. We look at it a little bit differently. Because we're from here, because we're people of color, all five of us as owners of the business, we want to make sure that we're not just doing a one-time thing. That we want to make sure that we're here, we're going to be here for the long term, and that we're giving back on a continual basis. The first community benefit for us is jobs. Jobs. That's what this neighborhood needs, and we're going to have a focus on making sure that we're hiring from the Grove Hall community. We want people to walk. We want people to be able to walk to the site and do their job and then leave and then walk back
to work.
home.
Yeah, okay.
Absolutely.
Live in the community. Okay.
And the plan for us is to have 40 jobs between delivery drivers, people who work in the warehouse, people who work in the dispatch for the vehicles. So there's a plan for 40 jobs, and we've made commitments for 80% Boston residents, 50% Roxbury, Dorchester, and Grove Hall residents, 51% people of color, 51% women, 10% veterans, 5% LGBTQ, and 5% persons with disabilities. So for us, the major thing that we're doing are the jobs and the jobs that we'll be bringing to the community and those who will be assisting. And for us, it's not just jobs where we're paying $10 an hour or something like that, or $14 an hour, which is the minimum wage. We're going to be paying, somewhere between $16 and $20 an hour. And for our projections, we actually use $26 an hour to put together our business plan. So, we have a budget, and those individuals will be, they'll get healthcare, dental, vision, paternal and maternal leave. They'll also get down payment assistance, for
housing?
For housing, yeah, absolutely. So when you couple $5,000 down payment assistance with the $40,000 or so that you can potentially get from the city of Boston, you're looking at $45,000 on a down payment for your first home. That's more than I put up when my wife and I, when we bought our home. That was more than more than we had to put down for our down payment. So we're also doing a community benefits fund. The community benefits fund is going to be a board that's made up of people from the Grove Hall community, and they're going to have autonomy to determine where the funds from that fund for that benefit go. What worthy cause in the community goes to. We'll also be carving out 5%. Of the investment opportunity in this company, because going back to the rooted in Roxbury model, where our Newberry Street has 52 of 54 investors are people of color, 5% of the investors that we bring on are going to be specifically set aside for Grove Hall. So we want to make sure that people in Grove Hall have skin in the game in this, and also when we're successful, that again we are giving back to our community, and in this case directly to the Grove Hall community.
So. Let's talk a little bit about how this, the proponents, or the opponents, I should say, have said that your business would have a deleterious impact in Grove Hall.
It's a strong word.
It is, but it's been said. It's not my word. In fact, it was used specifically by Minister Randy.
Yes.
And by that, I assume that he means that kids will have access to drugs in a way that they haven't, particularly kids in the community, young people, minors. This is just his point.
Fair enough.
And I don't think he's being holier than thou. I think he's
Misguided.
presenting a perspective.
Fair.
I think you begin to answer the question. Is it fair for him to say that there will be a negative impact
No,
by
I mean,
your business?
Two things.
Mhm.
Two things. I'll say that one, it's naive because it's naive to think that proliferation, if you will, of cannabis began in 2016 with legalization.
Mhm.
We have to realize that before any of us were born, people were using marijuana and were using it illegally. So
Mhm.
this isn't something that's new to the black community. It's not new to the city of Boston. It's not new to the United States or the world for that matter.
Mhm.
This is something that's been around, and in many countries, it's been around in an illegal form. So this is not new. What's new is through legalization, young people don't have access to it. Young people still have access to it in the illicit market because your local corner drug dealer is not checking your ID before they sell you the drugs.
So the example that he used,
Mhm.
and I don't think he was being holier than thou. I'm not trying to be that also. Just trying to be practical. Here's an example that he used. Well, in liquor stores in Grove Hall tonight, there'll be an underage person standing in front of the liquor store asking an individual who is of age to buy them some liquor when they go in, give
Yeah.
them some money.
Yeah.
And because that store is cited there, that liquor store, it gives them access in a way to that liquor. Now, Minister Randy was saying, as I understood it, was that the ability for people to purchase from the warehouse, delivery or otherwise, potentially gives younger people an opportunity to have access to drugs, to marijuana as a drug. Is that naive?
Yeah, I
Mhm.
mean,
Mhm.
maybe not the kids that went to, like myself, who went to John D. O'Brien School of Mathematics and Science, would look at the economics of buying a retail product with a double markup and say, well, this doesn't make sense when I can go to a local, go to someone on the corner and buy it for a lot cheaper, and also they're not checking my ID. So yes, it is naive because there are people who are selling illicit cannabis in the illicit market to young people today, right now. A transaction just happened, I'm sure. They're doing it right now, and no one's checking where that weed came from. They're not checking, anything about it. They're just doing it. And the person who's selling it is not confirming the age of the individual that they're selling to.
Okay, so Minister Randy might say...
in the legalized market, it doesn't happen like that. Whereas a young person can walk into a liquor store, young people can't walk into our facility. What we'll be selling, just to be frank, we'll be selling overpriced weed. And I'll say it one more time, it's overpriced weed. You can buy it a lot cheaper on the street. So why would you buy it from a dispensary overpriced?
Well, not to, in order to not risk being arrested, for example. That could be,
But
you buy it on the street, you risk arrest, don't you?
And if you're hanging outside, and using your example, if you're hanging outside of a dispensary waiting to purchase it from someone who just purchased it legally, that is also an arrestable offense.
Right.
That's also very illegal. And again, as I said from the very beginning, our goal is to sell to responsible people.
Okay.
That's how I started this. If we know of someone who is selling it and then or purchasing and then reselling it, we will report that person. And I'll say it one more time. We will report that person. So don't buy from us.
As you should, right.
If you're going to sell it to young people or other irresponsible people, because that's an arrestable offense.
It's Politics and Grits with Brian Keith, entrepreneur in the black community, lives in Grove Hall, wants to bring a business that focuses on the sale of marijuana through a warehouse. It's not an open market. You can't walk in the door and buy. Unlike Oasis, which is across the street, which I believe you can walk in, it's not that type of business.
It is not.
Let's take a call. Brian Keith, Politics and Grits with Kevin Peterson. Caller.
Good morning, Kevin. Good morning to your guest. I just had a question for if either one of you can answer. Do we know if there's been a study of the impact of Oasis, which is across? I know the question keeps coming up about the impact on youth. Has anyone studied to see what the impact has been in the community, negative or positive, since Oasis has opened up?
Yeah, actually. So I don't believe that there has been a formal study, but I'm glad that the caller brought that back up because I want to go back to the deleterious effect of Pure Oasis. It doesn't exist. There's no deleterious effect. And the anecdotal information
Oasis?
of
As
Pure
a bus-
Oasis
of
being
Pure
cited
Oasis?
in Grove Hall. And the example
Well,
that I give,
there was a major robbery there, my understanding is, right?
was that the
Okay.
first robbery to ever happen in the Grove Hall community?
Of course not.
Okay.
And
So-
this has become a little frustrating here.
So, but
wait a
robberies-
minute, because I won't allow you to do it anymore. You said that there was no deleterious impact of Oasis.
Correct.
There was a robbery there, and some of that marijuana got onto the street because it was a robbery illegally. That's the deleterious impact. Now, to switch to say, okay, well, there was a robbery at the pizza store. Well, of course, that's a deleterious impact also. The point is that, yes, there has been a negative impact. Of course, there are negative impacts across the community. But to say that there has not been is disingenuous, Brian. Okay?
Well,
so you can go ahead and...
But like I said,
Negative.
deleterious
Negative.
is a strong word.
Well, one of the synonyms is
And-
a negative impact. So if there was a robbery there, that's the negative impact. Now, of course,
Should
robberies happen everywhere.
But should we close all banks?
No, of
Should
course
we close
not.
all banks?
Of course not. But of course
So then
not.
again, the
But-
equivalency that you're making is not fair. You can't say that because something happened, well, now it's the worst thing ever. That's
No,
not,
I didn't
that's
say
not
that.
fair.
You may be misunderstanding deleterious. It means negative. Only negative.
It's a little stronger than negative, but
negative.
fair enough.
Negative. And that's all. That's what you were saying, and that's what the caller was asking. I think he was asking, what has been the impact? Now, we can talk about
If I may give you the example that I wanted to give you, very quickly.
We can talk about the positive impact of Oasis. It's created jobs,
Yeah.
and I believe they have a community benefits package, right? So they brought money into the into the community, brought jobs into the community.
Certainly.
We can talk about that as very positive things. But to say that there hasn't been any negative impact is I don't think it's fair. Now you can make your point.
Sure. So, and I hope he's okay because he's given me this example and he's told me on the record that he's given it to many politicians who he's walked through the community. But Executive Director of Grove Hall Main Streets, Ed Gaskin, we've had conversations about Pure Oasis and its impact on the community. And what he's done every time a politician who wants to see Grove Hall and understand the economics and what's happening in Grove Hall, he actually told me that he brings them to Pure Oasis.
Yeah.
And he says, do you see lines outside? And they say no. Do you see cars lined up on the street that are blocking traffic? And they say no. Do you see any impact at all besides the fact that it's hair? No. So I mean, they're there. They're open. They've been open for more than a year. And did they have a robbery? Yes.
Yeah.
That was
Mr.
their issue.
Mr.
Just like if
Mr.
someone broke into my
Mr.
car, that
yeah.
would be my issue.
Yeah.
But that's not an impact on the
No,
community.
it's a community issue. But Mr.
Okay.
Keith, I've seen lines in front of Pure Oasis. Now, I don't think that's necessarily negative.
Mm-hmm.
There have been lines down the street. I've noticed it because they were white people, right? I'm like, where are all these white people doing in Grove Hall? I'm not saying that's negative. In fact, that's good for business, as they would have it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not true that there aren't lines, and to the extent that Mr. Gaskin was saying that long lines were in some ways negative, he's being disingenuous, and I don't think he brought those politicians to Pure Oasis during the right time of the day or the appropriate time of the day. I've seen it. I go through Grove Hall all the time. I bank at One United. I see the lines.
I own a building across the street from there. So
You've never
I'm
seen
there-
lines there?
No, I
whoa.
have seen a line. Listen, I've seen a line on 420. I did see a line on 420, and I would hope
420. What's that? What's 420?
420 is sort of like the cannabis holiday.
Okay.
So I've seen a line on that day, and I think I saw a line there maybe the day before Thanksgiving. Again, I would hope that people.
I don't
are
think
looking-
lines are necessarily negative, but for it to be cast as something
It is
as
one of
negative,
the-
and
Yeah, it is one of the negative aspects that people say cannabis
Is that
businesses bring, and the reality is that when there's one or two, which there was for a very long time, cannabis businesses open, lines will form. That's supply and demand. As more cannabis businesses open, lines will diminish because there's more options for people to go to. So whether it's lines of vehicles or lines of people, those things have already diminished, and that is true at Pure Oasis. It's true at the Netta facility, which was the first in the area in Brookline, and it's true at pretty much all of the facilities that they're either working to contain their lines inside or they're just no lines in general.
The point that Mr. Crawford, Jamal Crawford, was making earlier was that you know, citing this business at 415 Blue Hill Avenue is essentially citing the business on at where Minister Don Muhammad had his business, and he, of course, was a holy man in the community,
Yep.
a Muslim leader from Nation of Islam. Jamal seemed to suggest, and Minister Randy Muhammad seemed to suggest that you're placing this this business around cannabis on holy ground. You disagree with that?
No, I think that when the building was purchased, I think that there was a lack of knowledge of the history of the building. After the fact, well after the fact, well after we proposed the cannabis business, I actually had a sit-down, one-on-one sit-down with Minister Randy, and I asked him to tell me about the history, tell me about Minister Don. I was not aware of Minister Don and his legacy, and you only know what you know, and if you don't know something, you learn. So I went to Minister Don I went to Minister Randy to learn about Minister Don, his history, the history of the building. After learning about the history, we actually offered them to utilize some of the space in the building so that there could be a maintained legacy of what once was. And we thought that was a good gesture, and it was an honest gesture. It was a real gesture, carving out about 800 to 1,000 square feet from the building so that they could have it free of charge, essentially, for as long as they wanted it, to do with it what they will. The offer was not accepted, and that's okay. But it's not to say that we didn't try to kind of meet in the middle and find a way where we could be understanding of the history and create an opportunity for the nation to still remain in that building.
We only have about 5 minutes or so.
That was quick.
We're good conversation. But from my perspective, you haven't answered the question. Do you think it's holy ground, as Jamal Crawford sort of suggests, as Minister Randy suggests?
It's not for me to anoint a space holy ground, so I can't say. I understand that people in the nation have specific feelings about the building, but the building was legally sold, and the building was on the market.
Do you appreciate the fact that it's considered by some people in the community as sacred ground?
No, I understand that, and I respect it. The building could have been purchased by a developer who wouldn't be willing to have these conversations that we're having right now.
By the way,
knock the building
some
down.
of the nuts and bolts. By the way, this is in your building. You don't own it. Is it the building registered in your name as
No.
owning it?
Our business partner owns the building through his real estate development company, and
Who's that?
That's Salman Chowdhury.
Chowdhury. He's the person who owns Dudley Cafe.
That's right.
Right. Okay. So he owns the building.
Correct.
Okay.
And he's one of our business partners in cannabis.
During the hearing yesterday, there was a little bit of chatter about partnerships. I guess there were 3, and now there are 5.
There were four. No,
there were 4.
there've always been 5.
There've always
There's
been
4
5.
members, owners of Root and Roxbury.
Mhm.
That's our brick and mortar dispensaries that we're hoping to put.
Are you equal partners? Is it 25? Well, I don't know what the math.
On the-
21, 21, 21.
on the brick
or
and
is there a
mortar,
majority?
no.
Is there? Okay, the brick and mortar. Chowdhury owns it. So as a partner,
No, he's
Okay.
actually one of the minority owners in the brick and mortar.
Okay.
And this is it's all public, but it's all private information about how we formed our business.
Yeah.
It's in my opinion, it's irrelevant, but I'm happy to have the conversation.
Well, some people. Well, I don't think it's irrelevant because I'm not bringing it up as an investigative sort of personality. It was raised yesterday during the hearing.
Yep.
Correct.
Yeah, it was
by
raised
Commissioner
about-
Holmes, I think.
Commissioner Joyce.
Joyce, right.
It was she asked about the ownership stake of En route. the delivery business.
Okay.
It was at one time 51% owned by James Finney, and then it was, I want to say, 12 and a quarter by the four of us. That was out of necessity. The state Cannabis Control Commission basically placed you had to be an economic empowerment applicant in order to open a delivery business, and the economic empowerment applicant had to be a 51% owner.
This conversation will continue. Brian Keith, thank you for your for coming, and thank you for your well poised presentation around around your issues. I think it's wonderful to have you in the community advocating in terms of economic development, and it's wonderful for you to forthrightly make your point to people. And pleasantly and kindly make your point to people who oppose you, and some of whom have been vehement about their opposition. I want to welcome you back.
Absolutely.
Because this isn't going away. There's some other hearings that are coming up around disposition of this issue. Brent, you have any party words before we leave? Did we miss any points?
No, I think that...
Have you been treated unfairly?
No, I think that, and I've said that from the beginning about you.
Okay.
I was concerned to begin with, but I think that having had conversations with you offline, I recognize that you want to get both sides out.
Yeah, it's important.
You want your listeners and everyone to hear both sides of the conversation so that people can make independent decisions.
Yeah,
and
because
appreciate that.
because here it is. It's community control in terms of entrepreneurial opportunities.
Yeah.
People like you. We shouldn't drive people like you out of a community process when there's obvious benefits. I think the controversy piece here is the sale of the product.
Mm-hmm.
But it's community control just in terms of those abutters and those people, Sister Virginia and other people who have been
Sure.
there for a long time. And this kind of discussion is robust and will have its impact, I think, across the city in terms of the black community and black leadership. Brian Keith from En Route. We're going to see if that warehouse comes into Dorchester. I wish you well.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for
I
having me.
appreciate it
Thank
very
you.
much.
You can't buy me with compliments, and you can't run me home with criticism, because I don't need your opinion to be who I am. I already know. I know. Somebody shout, I know. When you know what you know, it don't matter what they're saying on the right or what they're saying on the left. You have to know Jesus knew. He knew who he was. I heard him say, I am that I am. I am the bread of life. I am the lily of the valley. I am the day star. I am the kinsman redeemer. I am a wheel in the middle of the wheel. I am the Lamb of God. I am the scapegoat. I am your bridge. I am the physician. I am water in dry places. I am the bright morning star. I am the hope for tomorrow. I am the light of the world. I am the mighty God. I am the wonderful counselor. I am the Prince of Peace. I am your help. I am your strength. I am your joy. I am. I know 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 that 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 I know. Yes, I know. Somebody shout, I know. It's not just that Jesus knows who he is, but I also know who I am. I am